I was 36 years old when I learned that kindness can be mistaken for weakness, and that some people will smile at you every day while quietly memorizing your life. Every morning, rain or shine, I gave spare change to the same woman outside the subway. I never asked her name. She never asked for mine. Until one morning she grabbed my wrist, leaned in close, and whispered my full name. Not the one on my ID, the one only people at my job used. That was the moment my stomach dropped. Because in that second, I understood she had not been asking for help. She had been watching me. What she did next happened in public, in front of witnesses, and it spread faster than I could explain. Within days, I lost my job. My reputation followed. And the quiet life I worked years to protect was gone. I thought my story would end there. It did not, because what I did after that unfolded in front of so many people that for a long time strangers recognized my face before they recognized my name. My name is Clara Whitman, and I was 36 years old when my life quietly split into a before and an after. At the time, I did not know what was happening. Looking back now, I can pinpoint the exact place, the exact hour, the exact sound that marked the beginning of everything unraveling. It was the echo of footsteps in the subway tunnel just after dawn. Every weekday morning, I took the same route to work, same train, same platform. Same bitter smell of metal and stale coffee clinging to the air. I worked as an administrative coordinator at a mid-sized real estate firm downtown. Nothing glamorous, nothing powerful, just steady, predictable, safe. At least, that is what I told myself when I needed reassurance that my life made sense. I lived alone in a small one-bedroom apartment above a bakery on Cedar Street. The walls were thin, the heat unreliable, but the rent was manageable. After my divorce 3 years earlier, manageable had become my definition of peace. No chaos, no raised voices, no surprises. That morning routine was my anchor, and she was part of it. She sat near the turnstiles every day. Same spot. Same hunched posture. Same frayed gray coat that swallowed her thin frame. Her hair was always pulled back in a loose knot, strands escaping like she had stopped caring halfway through fixing it. Most people avoided eye contact. Some stepped around her as if she were invisible. Others stared for a second too long, then looked away, guilty. I never did. The first time I gave her change, I did not think much of it. I had fumbled through my bag, pulled out a few coins, and dropped them into her cup without slowing my stride. But the sound of those coins hitting plastic echoed louder than expected. She looked up, our eyes met. It was not a warm smile, not exactly. It was sharp around the edges, like a smile that had learned too much about survival. From that day on, it became a habit. $1, sometimes $2, sometimes just whatever loose change I had. She never asked, never thanked me out loud. She would just nod. Sometimes she would say my name. That should have unsettled me. I never told her my name. At first I told myself it was coincidence. Someone else must have said it, or I had imagined it. But over time, it became harder to ignore. Every morning, without fail, she would look up as I passed and say, "Good morning, Clara." Always softly, always calmly. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. I remember the first time I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It was late October. The air had turned sharp. I had just come off a brutal week at work. A deal had fallen through, and my supervisor, Mark, had blamed me in front of the entire office. I had stood there, silent, cheeks burning, while he smiled and moved on. That morning, I dropped $1 into her cup with more force than usual. She tilted her head and said, "Rough week, Clara." I froze. I had not spoken to anyone on the platform. I had not taken a call. I had not even sighed out loud. The noise of the station roared around us. But in that moment, it felt like everything went quiet. "How do you know that?" I asked. She chuckled, low and dry. "People wear their troubles like coats. Yours is heavy today." I laughed it off. That was easier than asking questions I was not sure I wanted answered. I told myself she was observant. That was all. But the pattern continued. She commented on my work schedule, noticing when I arrived later than usual. She mentioned the color of the blouse I had worn the day before. She asked about the bakery downstairs from my apartment, even though I had never told her where I lived. Each comment landed like a small stone dropped into still water. Ripples spreading, unease growing. Her name, I learned eventually, was Eleanor. She told me on a morning when the rain came down in sheets, and the platform smelled like wet concrete and rust. Eleanor, she said, tapping the side of her cup. People forget names matter. She was in her late 60s, maybe older. It was hard to tell. Her face carried deep lines, not just from age, but from bitterness etched in over time. There was intelligence there, sharp eyes, watchful, too watchful. I started noticing things I had ignored before. She was never truly begging. She never called out, never pleaded. She simply watched, observed, cataloged, and when people crossed her path, she remembered them. Most days, I told myself I was being paranoid, that my kindness had simply made me visible. That was all. Then came the morning she stopped me. I was halfway through the turnstiles when I felt fingers wrap around my wrist. Not hard, not gentle, just enough pressure to make a point. I turned, heart hammering, breath caught somewhere in my chest. Her face was inches from mine. "You should be careful, Clara," she whispered. "People like you lose things easily." Her grip tightened for half a second longer than necessary before she let go. I stood there, frozen, coins still clenched in my hand, as the train thundered into the station behind me. People rushed past. No one noticed. No one ever does. That was the moment the routine cracked, 'cause I did not know it yet, but Eleanor had already decided something about me. And once she did, there was no going back. If you have ever been kind to someone who later used it against you, this story is for you. If you have ever been underestimated, watched closely, and quietly targeted because you seemed harmless, stay with me. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and settle in. What happened to me began with a simple act of generosity, and it ended with a lesson in justice that no one involved will ever forget. After that morning, I tried to change nothing. Told myself that reacting would only give Eleanor power, so I kept my routine. Same train, same platform, same measured steps. But the station no longer felt familiar. It felt watched. Eleanor noticed immediately. The next morning, she did not reach for my wrist. She did not whisper. She simply smiled as I approached, slow and knowing, as if we shared a secret I did not remember agreeing to keep. "You look tired today," she said. "Stress does that." I dropped the change into her cup without meeting her eyes. The clink sounded louder than it should have. At work, things began shifting in ways I could not explain at first. Small things, innocent things. A file missing from my desk. A calendar reminder moved. A client email I was certain I had sent, suddenly nowhere to be found. Mark called me into his office 3 days after Eleanor grabbed my wrist. His door closed with a soft click that felt final. "You need to be more careful, Clara," he said, folding his hands on the desk. "There have been mistakes. Mistakes, plural. I apologized. I always did. That had been my survival skill for years." But as I walked back to my desk, a cold thought settled in my stomach. These were not my mistakes. I knew my job. I had built my reputation on being thorough, precise, invisible. That night, I lay awake listening to the bakery downstairs shut off its ovens. The smell of bread lingered, usually comforting. Not that night. My mind replayed Eleanor's voice. Her grip, the way she said my name. The next morning, Eleanor greeted me with a question. "How is work, Clara?" I stopped walking. There it was again. That sense of being examined under harsh light. I forced a smile and said nothing, but she continued. "Offices can be cruel places. One rumor can undo years of effort." My heart began to race. "You should not worry so much," she added lightly. "Worry makes people careless." I boarded the train with my pulse thudding in my ears. Within a week, The mistakes escalated. A contract went out with the wrong figures. A meeting I was supposed to attend had been rescheduled without my knowledge. Mark stopped making eye contact with me in the hallway. Then came the email. Human Resources wanted to speak with me. No context, no explanation. It's just a time and a room number. I walked into the HR office with my shoulders squared, rehearsing calm explanations in my head. The woman behind the desk smiled politely and slid a printed email across the table. It was from an anonymous account. It accused me of falsifying documents, of leaking client information, of manipulating schedules for personal gain. The words blurred as I read them. "This is not true," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "None of this is true. We understand," she replied. "But we have to investigate." Investigate. The word echoed. That evening, I passed Eleanor without giving her anything. I could not bring myself to. She watched me closely, eyes narrowing. "You forgot something," she called out. "I am in a hurry," I said. She laughed. Everyone is in a hurry when they are about to lose something. I did not sleep that night. The investigation dragged on. 2 weeks of whispered conversations. Of coworkers avoiding my desk. Of Mark speaking to me only through curt emails. My access to certain files was restricted. My name removed from projects. Every morning, Eleanor had something new to say. A comment about office politics, a remark about trust. A warning disguised as advice. "You should be careful who you disappoint," she said one morning, stirring her cup with a finger that trembled only slightly. "Some people remember slights very well." I started taking a different entrance to the station. She noticed. Detours rarely change destinations. She called after me. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. I was called into a conference room with HR and Mark. The air felt heavy. Blinds were half closed, casting striped shadows across the table. "We are letting you go," Mark said, not looking at me. Effective immediately. I felt something inside me crack. They cited loss of trust, unprofessional conduct. Concerns raised by multiple sources. Multiple. I walked out with a cardboard box and a ringing in my ears. 20 minutes later, I was standing on the platform, jobless, numb, staring at Eleanor. She smiled. That was when I realized this was not coincidence. This was not paranoia. This was intention. And I still did not know how far she was willing to go. Losing my job did not happen all at once. Landed in pieces. First, the silence from my phone. Then the weight of the box in my arms. Then the way the platform lights flickered, as if even the station could not quite believe what had happened. I stood there longer than I should have, watching commuters move around me like water around a stone. No one asked if I was okay. No one slowed down. That invisibility I had cultivated for years finally swallowed me whole. Eleanor watched from her usual spot. I did not approach her. I could not. If I did, I knew my voice would betray me. So I turned and walked past, heart pounding, jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. I could feel her eyes on my back the entire way down the platform. "You should listen when people warn you," she said softly, just loud enough to reach me. The doors closed behind me before I could respond. That night, my apartment felt smaller than it ever had. The hum of the refrigerator was too loud. The streetlight outside my window cast a harsh glow across the ceiling. I sat on the edge of my bed, box of office belongings at my feet, and stared at a framed photo of myself from 3 years earlier. I barely recognized the woman smiling back. She looked hopeful, untouched. I replayed every interaction with Eleanor, every comment, every knowing look. A pattern emerged that made my stomach twist. She had known things before they happened. She had spoken as if the outcome was already written. The next morning, I woke with a headache and a single sharp thought. This was not about money. If it were, she would have asked. If it were desperation, she would have pleaded. Instead, she had observed, waited, chosen. I needed proof. I began retracing my steps, my emails, a calendar. I pulled up backups I had saved on a personal drive months earlier. a habit born from years of working under people like Mark. What I found made my breath catch. Files had been accessed from my work account at odd hours. Emails sent from my address while I was asleep. Calendar changes made from an IP address I did not recognize. Someone had been using my credentials. I remembered Eleanor's hands. The way her fingers lingered when she grabbed my wrist. The way her eyes flicked to my bag that morning. My bag where my phone always sat in an outer pocket. Cold realization settled over me. I had charged my phone at a public outlet near her spot more than once. That afternoon, I returned to the station earlier than usual. I stood across the platform, pretending to scroll through my phone while watching Eleanor from a distance. She was not panhandling. She was talking, quietly, to a man in a dark jacket. He handed her something small. She slipped it into her coat with practiced ease. When she looked up and spotted me, her expression changed. Just for a moment, surprise. Then annoyance. Then that familiar smile. "You came back," she said. "Most people do." I did not respond. I boarded the train and stood near the door, pulse racing. The man in the dark jacket got on as well. He did not look at me, but I felt his presence like a weight. That was when fear gave way to something else. Anger. Not the loud kind. The quiet, focused kind that sharpens the edges of your thoughts. I had been careful my entire life. I had followed rules, stayed small, trusted when I should have questioned, and it had nearly destroyed me. That night, I made a decision. I would not confront Eleanor. Not yet. I would not accuse. I would not beg. I would watch her the way she had watched me. I began documenting everything. Times, dates, comments. I recorded our interactions on my phone, keeping it hidden in my coat pocket. I noted the people who spoke to her, the days she left early, the moments her mask slipped. Patterns emerged quickly. She was not homeless. She arrived in clean shoes, left with full bags. She disappeared for hours during the middle of the day, then returned just before rush hour. She used a prepaid phone, switching it out every few days. I followed her one afternoon, keeping my distance, heart hammering with every step. She walked with purpose once she left the station, posture straightening, pace quickening. She entered a small internet cafe 2 blocks away and stayed inside for nearly an hour. That was my confirmation. It was deliberate, calculated. She had chosen me because I was predictable, because I was kind, because I would not fight back. She was wrong. As I stood outside that cafe, cold air burning my lungs, I realized something else. If Eleanor had taken my job, she would not stop there. And if I did not act now, I would lose far more than my career. I did not rush my revenge. Rushing would have made it sloppy. And Eleanor thrived on other people being careless. So I slowed down. I let my anger settle into something colder, sharper. The first step was understanding her leverage. From the internet cafe, I learned her routine. Same terminal, same corner seat, same hours. I sat 2 rows back one afternoon, who'd pulled low, listening to the soft clatter of keys and the hum of old computers struggling to keep up. I watched her reflection in the darkened screen in front of me. Focused, precise, not the posture of a desperate woman. The posture of someone working. I noticed how she logged into multiple accounts. How she checked email addresses that were not hers. How she used a flash drive, sliding it in and out of the machine with practiced ease. That flash drive became my focus. I began visiting the cafe daily, not close enough to raise suspicion, close enough to blend in. I learned the staff's shift changes, the blind spots in the security camera coverage, the times Eleanor stepped away to use the restroom, leaving her bag unattended for exactly 2 minutes and 20 seconds. I timed it. On the 5th day, my hands trembled as I counted the seconds. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. When she stood and walked toward the back, I moved. Her bag was heavier than I expected. I slid my fingers inside, found the flash drive by touch alone, and replaced it with an identical one I had prepared earlier. The plastic was cool against my skin. For a moment, I froze, breath caught, listening for footsteps. None came. I returned to my seat just as Eleanor sat back down. She did not notice. That night, I plugged the drive into my laptop. My screen filled with folders, evidence, logs, screenshots, stolen credentials, instructions written in careful detail. She had been running a small but efficient identity manipulation scheme, targeting people who moved predictably through the city. People like me. I documented everything. Then I planted my counterstrike. The replacement flash drive I had given her contained a mirrored folder structure, but with one critical difference. It logged every access, every transfer, every IP address, and it silently copied everything to a secure cloud account in my name. The next step required patience. I returned to the station as usual. I gave Eleanor her change again. Watched relief flicker across her face before she masked it. "You came to your senses," she said. "Everyone deserves help," I replied. She smiled wider. Over the next week, she grew bolder. Her comments sharper. She hinted at new targets. She bragged without realizing it, letting details slip like loose threads. "People trust too easily," she said one morning, "especially women who think kindness protects them." I recorded every word. Then I made my final move. I contacted an investigative journalist I had once coordinated with during a property dispute at work. I sent her an anonymous email, included a sample of the files, enough to spark interest, enough to demand a meeting. When we met, I slid my phone across the table and played the recordings. Her eyes widened. "This is big," she said quietly. I nodded. "It is bigger than me." The article dropped 2 weeks later, front page. Names redacted at first, then confirmed. Surveillance footage from the cafe. Logs from the flash drive. Patterns traced back to Eleanor and her accomplice. The city reacted fast. Police flooded the station. Officers stood where Eleanor used to sit. Yellow tape blocked off her corner. Commuters whispered, pointed. I arrived early that morning and stood across the platform, heart racing, watching. Eleanor appeared confused. She stepped forward, stopped. An officer approached her. "Eleanor Finch," he said, "we need to speak with you." Her eyes scanned the platform. They landed on me. For the first time, she did not smile. That was when I knew the plan had worked. And I still had not told her the worst part. The morning was sharp. Cold air cut through my coat like a blade. Steam rose from the subway vents. Every step I took toward the platform felt heavier, weighted with anticipation. Today, everything would change. I arrived early, hours before the rush. The station was quiet, except for the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead and the distant rumble of trains. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, steady and relentless, reminding me of every day I had been underestimated. Eleanor appeared on the platform exactly on time. It's her usual spot, her usual posture. But today, her movements carried a slight tension. She glanced around more than usual, fingers tightening around her coat. "You seem nervous," I called out softly, letting my voice carry just enough to reach her. She froze. Her eyes flicked to me, sharp and calculating. The officer approached from behind her, silent at first. Eleanor did not notice, not until he tapped her shoulder. "Ma'am, we need to ask you a few questions," he said, calm but firm. Her eyes widened. She turned toward me. For the first time, the sharpness in them wavered. "What is this about?" she demanded, voice trembling, just slightly. I took a step closer. The hum of the platform seemed to fade, replaced by the weight of silence. "You know exactly what this is about," I said, keeping my tone even, almost soft. "All the planning, all the manipulation. Every life you thought you could control." She laughed nervously. "I do not know what you are," the officer interrupted. "Everything we need is already documented. Follow us, please." Eleanor's face drained of color. She looked around for an escape, but the yellow tape and curious early commuters closed in. The man from the internet cafe appeared in the station too, handcuffed, escorted by another officer. The network she had depended on, the invisible web she had spun for years, collapsed around her in a single, unstoppable moment. I stepped back and watched. My chest felt tight. Adrenaline coursed through my veins. I wanted to speak, to gloat, to savor the humiliation she could not hide. But I stayed quiet. I let it happen. As they led her away, Eleanor's eyes met mine again. No smile, no amusement, only disbelief. She opened her mouth, probably to threaten, to bargain, but nothing came out. Silence, her power gone. And in that silence, I felt the weight I had carried for months lift, piece by piece. The station returned to its rhythm. Commuters resumed their routines. People passed by, unaware of the spectacle they had just missed. But for me, time slowed. Each footstep Eleanor took toward the exit felt like a heartbeat, a pulse of justice echoing across the platform. I remembered every insult, every stolen opportunity, every moment I had questioned myself. And now, each memory was no longer a wound. It was proof. Proof that I had been meticulous, patient, smarter, stronger. I did not smile immediately. I let the relief simmer inside me first. My knees loosened, my shoulders relaxed. For the first time in weeks, I breathed without thought of fear or suspicion. The journalist who had broken the story called me later that afternoon. "Clara, you did it. She will face every consequence." Every single one. I sat in my apartment, alone, and let the words sink in. A slow smile spread across my face, not out of cruelty, but from validation. The city had recognized the truth. Eleanor could no longer manipulate, no longer hide behind observation and deceit. Her control was gone. I remembered my mornings on the platform, the coins dropped into her cup, the silent nods. Every day, unknowingly, I had been preparing for this moment. Every routine, every quiet observation, every small act of patience had led here. And now justice had its full effect. I allowed myself a small celebration. Not loud, not flashy. It's just me acknowledging that I had survived, endured, and outsmarted someone who thought kindness was weakness. Someone who believed she could break me without consequence. I returned to the subway platform the following week. The station was busy. Crowds moved quickly. I walked past where she had sat. The spot was empty. Clean. The shadow of her presence lingered, but nothing more. For the first time in months, I felt peace, relief, triumph. I had reclaimed what was mine, my confidence, my dignity, and my life. And I knew as I walked toward the train that no one would underestimate me again. No one would mistake kindness for weakness. And no one would ever take advantage of me without consequence. Justice had arrived. And it had arrived quietly, like the very storm I had endured and survived. I smiled once more, a private acknowledgement. Eleanor had fallen. I had risen. And in that moment, I understood something profound. The strongest victories are not loud. They are deliberate, calculated, and inevitable. For the first time, I felt unstoppable. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. Eleanor was gone from the platform, gone from my life, and the city seemed to breathe a little differently. But I did not rush to fill the silence. I sat with it. Let it settle around me like the final notes of a song I had learned to play too late. I kept thinking about all the people she had manipulated over the years. How many had been like me, predictable, kind, to trusting? The thought made my chest tighten, but it also steeled me. That was the gift of this ordeal: clarity. I knew now the difference between vulnerability and foolishness, between empathy and naivety. Karma had a way of finding its mark. Not in a flashy, cinematic explosion. Not in a sudden public humiliation with fireworks. No, it came quietly, inevitably. The systems Eleanor thought she controlled turned against her. Every file she stole, every name she recorded, every trust she violated returned to the world with consequences attached. I learned something else. Strength is not loud. It is deliberate. It is patient. does not rush to punish, but it does not forgive recklessly either. I had waited, observed, and acted when the moment was right. The satisfaction did not come from seeing her taken away. Okay? It came from knowing I had orchestrated it myself. Okay? I returned to the platform weeks later, not for her, but for myself. The hum of the trains was no longer oppressive. The echoes of footsteps felt ordinary. The station was bustling. Faces passed me, unaware of the drama that had unfolded just months before. I smiled faintly. Life goes on. Life always goes on. I thought about my job, my reputation, and the confidence I had lost along the way. Everything I feared was stolen from me, and yet, through that loss, I had gained more than I ever had before. Insight, vigilance, the knowledge that no one could undermine me without consequence. That no one would see my kindness as a weakness again. People often ask why revenge matters, why one would go to such lengths. The answer is simple. It is not cruelty. It is reclamation. It is the act of standing firm when the world tries to rewrite your story. Eleanor had tried to erase me, but instead I rewrote the ending. I made the narrative mine. I thought about every small detail that had led to this. The coins I dropped every morning. The glances, the nods, the subtle observations. Every ordinary, repetitive action had become a part of my arsenal. Life teaches lessons in ways we rarely expect, and sometimes the lessons arrive disguised as suffering. And yet I would not call this closure forgiveness. I do not forgive Eleanor. I do not excuse what she did. Her hubris led to her downfall. Her pride, her meticulous plotting, all turned against her. Justice did not need my mercy. It needed my precision. New beginnings are strange. They do not arrive with fanfare. They arrive in quiet confidence, in the ability to walk through a place where fear once lived and breathe without tension. I found that in the station, in the hum of everyday life, in the predictable chaos of strangers moving in and out of my path, I learned that strength is not reactive. Strength is anticipatory. It is the calm before action, the stillness before the storm. I had practiced patience, and it had paid off. I had turned fear into a weapon, observation into leverage, and planning into inevitability. Every time I pass that subway platform now, I remember the lessons. I remember the fear, the injustice, the manipulation. But I also remember the quiet satisfaction of watching the truth unfold and knowing I had engineered it. Karma arrived exactly as it should, and I stood free, stronger than before. For anyone watching, remember this: kindness is not weakness, but vigilance is essential. Trust can be earned, but it must be tempered with awareness. Life will test you, and sometimes the people you help the most will try to use that help against you. It is not about rage. It is about ensuring that injustice does not go unchecked, and in that balance lies power. If this story gave you chills, hit the like button and subscribe. Share your most satisfying revenge story in the comments. Every act of justice, every moment of patience deserves to be acknowledged. Stories like this remind us that strength, cunning, and resilience are the true measures of power.